And now, on a pale horse. Chapter 10. Hot Smoke. Zane slept at his death house, accepting the routine services of his staff without noticing, then got to work early next day. Since it seemed he couldn't do anything to help Luna before the petition was considered, he tried to put the matter from his mind by working harder. As luck would have it, his caseload was small at the moment. He took 2 clients in rapid order, then found himself with the maximum time of 30 minutes for the third. It seemed pointless to go early, but he had to distract himself some way, so he oriented and rode the death horse to the address. This was an isolated spot in the western state of Nevada, the least populated region of the United States, because it was the least habitable. Zane's gems guided him to one of the desert areas, a barren wasteland. This was Dragon Country. The scenic Hot Smoke Mountains, renamed in honor of the beasts, were riddled with the warrens of the fierce reptiles. Few plants survived, but that hardly mattered to the dragons, who were carnivorous, preying on tender virgins. Mostly the creatures ranged aloft, questing for virginal animals, but they had a gourmet appetite for the rare human variety when it could be obtained. In fact, he now remembered that this was the locale of the Dragoons, a cult dedicated to the welfare of this exotic species. The Dragoons had lobbied vigorously to prevent the construction of resorts, irrigated farm sites, and missile silos in the region, pleading that the hot smoke species of dragon had no other habitat and would, if not left free, suffer the extinction that had almost claimed them before their discovery. Fortunately, that discovery had been made by a man interested in rare life forms, who had used some elementary magic to track them down. Had the original trappers and settlers in this region discovered them, they would have been totally exterminated, and no one would have believed they had ever existed. The Dragoons had won several legal suits, for the general public was in a phase of environmental consciousness, so the hot smokers remained largely unmolested. But they still needed to eat, and virgins of any type were in short supply. The Dragoons were constantly looking for new sacrifices. Human sacrifices were generally illegal, but it was difficult to keep constant watch, and the state authorities were chronically short of personnel. Sure enough, as Zane arrived at the site for his client, he spied a lovely but terrified young woman, barely nubile, in a cage. It was afternoon here, and men were setting up a smudge pot, evidently planning to use the smoke to summon a dragon. How the Dragoons had captured this virgin, Zane did not know, but she was surely doomed. He would have to collect her soul as the dragon consumed her 25 minutes hence, unless he figured out a way to rescue her. He walked to the cage and spoke to the girl. "How do they bring you here?" he inquired, suspecting that she would turn out to have been drugged. She paused in her weeping and looked up at him, not recognizing him. That was odd, for his clients were normally attuned to his presence. "By truck, sir." "I mean, was it coercion? Did they kidnap you? If so—" Her lip trembled. "No, sir. I come of my own free will." "Do you know what they planned for you?" "To be gobbled by the dragon," she said, her eyes brimming over again. "I can't even take a mind-zonk drug, 'cause that changes the taste for the monster." So the dragons were sensitive, even to the virginity of the mind. This was a cruel denouement indeed. "But why do you accede to your murder?" My family. In debt." Now she broke down entirely and was unable to continue. So it was legal after all, because it was technically voluntary. She had sold herself to abate her family's debt. Such contracts had legal status, provided there was no deception. He understood that the Dragoons had an excellent credit rating, so there was no reason to doubt they had paid a fair price, redeeming this poor girl's family's debts. There was nothing he could do. At least he could get her out of the cage. That was unnecessarily degrading. But as he started to use his power on the lock, the maiden protested. "Sir, I am confined to guarantee no one deflorates me before the dragoons had everything figured. Of course, that would be a way to make her ineligible for the sacrifice, so they made quite sure no such mercy would occur at the last moment. There was a shimmer. A cloaked figure appeared beside the cage. "I will take your place, dear," the woman said. Zane jumped. He knew that voice. "Luna!" She turned to him. "Oh, I didn't realize you would attend this one." "It's my job," Zane said, "to harvest the soul of this undeflowered girl when—" He cut that off. "You can't take her place. You're not—" Luna turned a level gaze on him. "Not what?" "The hot smoke dragons are an endangered species because they consume only virgins," he said, somewhat lamely. She smiled grimly. "I am a virgin, physically." "But—" "The demon had his will of my mind and soiled my soul," she explained. "I would have suffered less had he been able to ravage me physically instead. But he cannot do that until my soul enters his realm. I am damned, the victim of psychic rape, but my body is chaste." Zane was not comforted by this clarification. "I put in a petition to review your scheduled demise. It's a put-up job. The unnamed wants you out of the way. I'm sure the review board will reverse it, but it'll be 10 days before it meets. If you go into this now—" Luna shook her head sadly. "My stones indicate that my time falls within this day. So I decided at least to make my passing useful to someone. I inquired at the Good Deeds Exchange, and they sent me here. This poor innocent girl—" She glanced at the maiden in the cage, who was taking all this in wide-eyed silence. "Who has offered her good life in sacrifice for the benefit of her family. She should be sent to heaven, but not yet. She has too many people to make happy on earth." "She is hardly assured of heaven," Zane said. "Check her yourself. She's a good girl, I'm sure." Zane oriented his soul verification stones. The sin stone remained dull while the other glowed brightly. "She's not burdened with sin," he exclaimed. "But how, then, could I have been summoned to collect her soul personally?" "Someone else must be going to die," Luna said with a knowing quirk of her lips. "You assumed it was the caged sacrifice, but—" He looked at her with burgeoning horror. "You are taking her place. You— Don't be silly. I'm going to hell in my own handbasket. It's sheer coincidence that you're here. My soul will not need you. In fact, I had hoped to handle this without your knowledge, quickly and cleanly." Zane oriented the stones on Luna. The reading was, of course, incomplete, but the sin stone was brighter. She was right. She could not be his client, but she was going to die. Now the dragoons approached. "The occasion is at hand," a well-dressed older man announced. "Our radar has located an approaching smoker." He produced a key and unlocked the cage, releasing the girl. "I will substitute," Luna said. "The Good Deeds Exchange sent me. Let this girl go, her onus abated." "How do we know you are eligible?" the man demanded. "The dragons get very disturbed when offered used goods." "Your kind can sniff a virgin from 10 meters away," Luna snapped. "You know I'm eligible." The man sniffed. "Why, you are, physically. You have the aspect of one who has been savagely used, but—" He shook his head, perplexed at his error. "Very well, we shall release this girl as soon as the dragon is satisfied." "See that you do," Luna said. "My friend will be on hand to verify it." The man looked at Zane as if seeing him for the first time. Zane looked back, knowing that for this man He was phasing into the aspect of death. "Ah, yes," the man said uncomfortably. "I am certain it will be all right. The dragons don't care how much ravishment is within a person's mind, as long as the mind is presently devoid of drugs and the body is chaste." He turned to his companion, who carried an ornate case. He opened the case and lifted out a gleaming silver knife, which he presented to Luna. "You are permitted to defend yourself with this alone. No magic or firearms. If you can fend off the dragon fairly, you will be freed, your onus abated." "This apple peeler is hardly sufficient to balk a fire-breathing monster," Luna said. "True, it is a token gesture required by the Fair Employment Commission. Naturally, we do not wish the dragon to be hurt, but it is theoretically possible." Luna shrugged. "I came here to die anyway. If the smoker doesn't take me, something else will." She took the knife. There was a speck on the horizon over the hot smoke mountain range. "Hark! It comes!" the man said, wonder and awe on his face. He had surely seen many similar dragons, but he was a reptile worshipper, and these were the lords of the reptile kingdom. "Only the designated virgin may remain, lest the dragons shear away. They're shy, you know, from the bad old days when sportsmen hunted them with bazookas." He scowled at the foul memory. "Luna," Zane said, unable to formulate a suitable protest. "Let me at least go in a manner of my choosing," she told him gently. "I will not have another chance." "But I love you." "I believe you do," she agreed. "Perhaps in time I would have returned the favor without reservation, if not distracted by grief. But it seems it was not to be. I think my father meant me to love you, but did not foresee this." She turned toward the dragon, who was now looming larger. The other people had retreated to a shielded baffle to watch the proceedings. There was even a television camera crew, for Dragon vs. Maiden was popular local color fare. "But the termination of your life has been rigged," Zane cried. "The Nether One cheated. You were supposed to live a full term, and to balk him politically, so he fixed the schedule to eliminate you early. You shouldn't have to die at all." She turned quickly, stood on tiptoe, and kissed him on the lips. "It's kind of you to tell me that, Zane. You press the case. Maybe if you prove it, you can get my soul freed from hell. I could join my father in Purgatory. That would be nice." Then she broke and walked resolutely toward the approaching form that was the dragon. Zane watched her go, helpless to prevent the disaster that had been scheduled. She was right. Satan had won this round by whatever means. Luna had shed her tears and accepted her fate, and now was doing a singularly generous thing. She was a good woman, no matter what the official records said. He did love her, and partly because of that, he could not interfere. She had chosen her mode. He looked at the death watch. The countdown was now at 4 minutes. Soon he would have to break away to attend to his true client, whoever that was, but first he would watch what happened here, though it destroy his joy in life. He still had time to do something to prevent what he least wanted to see. But he knew he wouldn't. Luna had selected the manner of her termination, and it was a worthy manner. The kindest thing he could do for her, ironically, was to let her be roasted and chewed to pieces by the dragon. The dragon loomed much larger as it circled the field, aligned itself, and swooped down for a landing. Hot smokers were not large dragons, as this class of reptile went, but their fire-breathing made them formidable. This one was a dragoness, a female, whose scales were shades of gray. On her back, between her great leathery wings, was a single armored egg. There was an exclamation from the baffle, and Zane saw the television cameraman mounting his zoom lens. An egg meant a potential baby dragon perpetuating the species. Of course the dragoons were interested. They would be doing their best to track that egg and the draglet who hatched from it. They might band it so they could trace its migration route by radio. Of course, some illegal hunter would probably poach it long before it grew to maturity. That was another reason this was an endangered species. Zane would have had more sympathy for the plight of the smokers had it not been Luna this dragoness was about to feed on. Luna came to a stop in the center of the desert valley, nervously holding her knife. Zane saw that she wore no jewelry, honoring the stricture against magic. There were surely stones in her house that could vaporize a dragon, but she was determined to fulfill her role properly. She had removed her cloak, and was garbed in a flowing white dress, and her hair glowed coppery in the sunshine. She seemed like the most lovely creature imaginable. But Zane knew he was not objective. He loved her. This was absolutely crazy. How could he watch the dragon slaughter her, and not even try to rescue her? He knew why objectively, but he could not accept it emotionally. There had to be another way. Another way for what? If Luna did not die this way, she would die some other way, probably a worse demise. He realized now that Satan would never let the 10 days till the hearing go by unchallenged. He would preempt the matter, presenting the hearing with a fait accompli. What else was to be expected from the father of lies? Zane had never had a chance to settle this matter through channels, so the termination date had been moved up, probably because of Zane's appeal, and it had been up to Luna to choose the manner of her demise on this designated day. At least the dragons weren't sadistic. They killed and fed efficiently. They were natural creatures, not given to waste. Zane contemplated the dragoness. She was about 6 meters long, with a wingspan the same amount, but her torso was serpentine rather than stout. Mass was sacrificed in the interest of flight. She had only one set of feet, and her head was small. In fact, she was bird-like in her fashion. But few birds were her size, or had teeth, or leather wings, or metallic scales. Both birds and dragons had evolved from the ancient reptiles, but the common ancestor had been perhaps 100 million years back. Maybe 70 million years ago the birds, mammals, and dragons had squeezed the dinosaurs into extinction. For a long time all three had prospered, but now the mammals, mainly in the form of mankind, were dominant. All too soon the dragons would be shoved into oblivion. If the death of a single person was hard, Zane thought, what then of the death of an entire species? He approved of the dragoons' campaign to save the smokers. He wished there were some other way to feed this dragoness. The smokeress rolled up her wings and folded them back against her torso. She inhaled, then puffed out a dense cloud of smoke. Zane realized that her burner was just warming up. Adventure stories depicting a dragon waking from a snooze and shooting instant flames were nonsense. It took a lot of energy to shoot flame, so it was never done carelessly. Dragons were cold-blooded, like other reptiles, and generally hibernated in winter or migrated south. Their fires were strictly for fighting and feeding. The hot smokers were more smoky than most, but where there was dragon smoke, there was dragon fire. The creature stalked Luna, who took an involuntary step back. Dragons were so constituted that they had to hunt and kill their own prey, so this was more than mere ritual. Why that prey had to be virginal was a mystery the experts had never fathomed, but there was no question it was true. A hot-smoked dragon would literally starve to death before it would consume either pre-killed or non-virginal flesh. The most persuasive conjecture about the origin of this restricted diet was that there had been a bad epidemic of venereal disease a few million years back, and that dragons who had consumed infected prey were damaged by the disease themselves. So it had become a matter of survival to eat only guaranteed clean meat. Thus virgins, very few of whom, had contracted VD. Now Zane saw that the dragoness was limping. One foot was weak, though he couldn't tell whether this was from physical or magical malaise. Sometimes cloddish people hurled curses at wild creatures, considering it great sport. It could take a curse months to wear off, and that could be an inconvenience at best and a fatality at worst. Other clods dumped the refuse of toxic spells in the wilderness, where innocent wildlife could stumble upon the dump and get hurt. No wonder this dragon had come to the feeding station. She couldn't forage effectively alone, not while burdened by the egg and handicapped by the foot. Zane caught himself up short. What was he thinking of? It was Luna this beast intended to feed on. The more handicapped the dragoness was, the better. Maybe Luna could, after all, fend off the monster with a knife. If she did that, if she escaped this fate legitimately. No. Fate couldn't so readily be cheated. Luna's death would not be the fault of the dragoness. It would be the fault of... The dragoness pounced. Luna danced away, slashing in the air with the knife. She might know death was inevitable, but she was not resigned to it. She would fight to live a few extra seconds, as a drowning person gasped for air. She was not a trained knife fighter, though her artistic hands might be more clever than most. In any event, the dragon fire would negate her efforts, so this was a largely automatic and futile exercise. The dragoness pumped up her bellows and oriented on the woman. The beast was hot now. She could send forth a searing blast. That would be the end. Of course, Luna had no chance. Zane couldn't help himself. He stepped in front of the monster. The flame shot out, but bounced off the death cloak without hurting him. "No!" Luna cried. "Let me die this way, Zane. Don't make me gamble on whatever else Satan has in store." To make her gamble on a different death. That concept shook him, though he had thought of it earlier himself. He had gambled compulsively in past years, and dug himself into a pit from which only death had finally extricated him. He had no wish to plunge back into that morass. Why, then, should he gamble with Luna's manner of dying? The smokeress was eyeing him, trying to determine why he wasn't roasted. He stared back, and she blanched in almost the manner of a human being, beginning to perceive the nature of his office. "Don't do it!" Luna cried. Zane reluctantly moved aside. He knew he had no right to interfere. The dragoness shook her head as if clearing it of the ashes of an unpleasant vision, and reoriented on Luna. Zane no longer seemed to exist for either of them. As death, he tended to fade from the awareness of anyone who was not his client. Yet the dragoness hesitated, for the spectre of death could not lightly be dismissed from the deepest imagination of any creature who spied it. Even the briefest vision of death tended to make a person or creature conscious of its own mortality, and that was disquieting. Most creatures would go to some lengths to avoid or expunge such awareness, and in this they were generally more successful than was man. Man's great curse was to perceive his death more clearly than did any other creature's. He could see the end coming, so suffered longer. The dragoness, shaken, began to unfurl her wings as if about to depart. "Don't change your mind now," Luna cried. "If you don't eat me, the life of the poor girl I replaced will be forfeit to the next dragon." Oops, that was correct. If Luna fought off the dragoness, she and the girl were free, but if she never actually encountered the monster, because some third party like himself interfered, her gesture would go for nothing. Luna might have argued the case, since the dragoness had fired a blast at her, but she had chosen instead to seek an honest death. Zane would have appreciated her determination more if he hadn't loved her. No, that wasn't right either. He loved her more because of it. Luna was showing her integrity and mettle in the most telling manner possible. He, Zane, had never done that. Still the dragoness paused. Zane had not realized that the sight of the human personification of death would have such impact on an animal. The dragoness really shouldn't be afraid of him. Did she know something he didn't? Luna charged at the monster, brandishing her knife. Now the smokeress reacted properly. She pumped up, swung her head about, and issued a jet of pure blue flame that extended a good 3 meters with very little smoke. Maybe the dragoness had not been pausing from alarm, but to work up a higher heat. Luna dodged the jet. It was so narrow, now that the hotbox had become fully operative, that it was easy to avoid, especially by someone watching the monster's head. Luna ran right up alongside the dragoness, stepped on the reptile's smoking snout, and scrambled onto her winged back. The startled dragoness whipped her head about. The serpentine neck was supple. She had no trouble biting at her own back. Then Luna got her hands on the egg. She ripped it free and held it like a football close to her body. "Now sear me with your fire!" she screamed. Of course the dragoness did not dare do that. She would roast her own precious offspring. She froze for a moment, paralyzed by indecision. She was smart enough to see the problem, but not smart enough to figure out a solution. Luna had made an amazing move and gained the advantage. Luna slid off the dragoness's back, holding the egg tucked under one arm. Still the reptile could not attack. The egg was hostage. The dragoons saw what Luna had done. "Put down that egg," the man in charge cried. "It's invaluable. So few dragons reproduce." Luna backed away from the dragoness, holding the egg before her as a shield. The smokeress switched her tail and snorted dense smoke, but did not attack. "The reckless use of pesticides has damaged the wilderness environment," the dragoon called. "Dragons' eggs have relatively fragile shells because of this, and many break before hatching time. Until the pesticide residue clears, and that may take decades, the species is flirting with extinction. Virgin, spare that egg." Luna looked down at the egg, considering. She nodded. She set the egg down on the sand, and moved away from it. How did this count? Zane wondered. Had Luna defeated the creature, discharging her obligation? If so... Luna charged the dragoness again, brandishing the silver knife. The fierce head whipped about automatically, the jaws opening. What madness was this? Luna didn't have a chance, but it happened so fast that Zane couldn't act in time to prevent it. The dragoness wafted out a gust of smoke, not having time to pump up another good fire. The smoke engulfed Luna for a moment. She screamed, and the sound tore at Zane's being. In a moment the smoke cleared, blown away by an idle breeze, and Zane realized to his added horror how hot that smoke had been. Luna's lovely hair and fine clothing were scorched, her skin blistered. She had been blinded and partially flayed by the heat. The dragoness limped forward and took the reeling woman in her jaws. The teeth crunched down, and rich red blood welled into her mouth and dripped from her chin. With wild surmise, Zane looked at his watch. The countdown stood at 0. His gems were pointing to Luna. "You were my client all along," he cried to the horribly mangled body. "Your good deeds, saving the designated virgin, sparing the valuable dragon's egg, feeding the dragoness, they squared your balance. You are dying even." He ran up to take her soul, for she couldn't truly die until he claimed it. The flames of hell could not be worse torture for her than this. But as he came to the terrible scene and saw her body bleeding in the dragoness's jaws, her head rolled toward him. Her burned eyes opened part way, the tatters of eyelids rising. Somehow she felt his presence. "Take me, death," she rasped in agony. Suddenly, Zane rebelled. This was the woman he loved. He looked into Luna's suffering face. He had never imagined that he would ever choose to extend such agony by even 1 second, but now he had to. "No," he said. He put the death watch on hold. Then the entire scene froze, for he had punched the button that stopped time itself, not just the countdown. Punched? Unconsciously, he had done the opposite, pulling it out. The clouds stopped moving in the sky. The leaves on the stunted bushes stopped quivering in the wind, and the dragoons were statues. The dragoness remained with her teeth clamped in Luna's body. Even the smoke hung motionless. Zane turned about. Sure enough, Kronos stood behind him. "I thought you would come to investigate," Zane said. "I want you to move us back to just before Luna got—" Kronos shook his head. "I can do that, Death, but it will not help you. Luna has been designated to die on this day. Only the manner of it is optional." Zane was grim. "Her death is now in my province. I love her. I know her early demise is illicit, and I will not take her soul." A woman walked across the sand. It was Fate in her middle guise. "You must take her soul, Death, or there will literally be hell to pay." "To hell with hell!" Zane exploded. "I will not take her on this basis. You may have been directed to set this up, Fate, but you cannot move her soul. Only I can do that, and I will not. Undo your mischief, for I will not let her die." Another figure appeared. It was Mars, the incarnation of war. "Fate set it up, but as you surmise, it was at the behest of the powers that be. She had and has no choice." "At the cheating behest of Satan," Zane cried. "That may be true," Mars said, "but you cannot war with him." "Satan cheated," Zane repeated. "I have put in a petition for redress that shall surely be granted when the facts are known. Until that petition is heard, I shall not indulge in any tacit collusion with the Prince of Evil. Luna shall not die." One more figure arrived, also immune to the stasis of time. It was Nature, wearing her dress of mist. "Desist this foolishness, Thanatos," she urged. "You have gotten away with breaking little rules, but this time you are in deeper than you know." Zane glared at them. "Are you all against me? Then all of you be damned. I know I'm right. I know my power, and I shall not be moved." Nature smiled grimly. "We are at the crisis point. It is the occasion to speak plainly." "I have heard you speak plainly," Zane retorted, "but you can't overrule me in my bailiwick. This woman shall not die." Fate smiled. "Relax, Death. We are on your side." Suddenly Zane had a mental vision of parallel lines, one of the 5 formations of thought Nature had described to him at their prior meeting. It was as if each incarnation was one of the matchsticks, and all were going the same way. "You're all in this. You all conspire to put me in this hole." "We all conspired," Kronos agreed. "Satan has to be balked, and God won't intervene. We incarnations are all that remains to enforce the covenant of non-intervention." Zane spun about, his angry gaze brushing past each of them. "The way I assumed the office of Death, my meeting with Luna, so carefully arranged by her father, who was in on this. My innocent, seemingly coincidental encounters with each of you other incarnations, Luna's present agony, all arranged beforehand." "No, not necessarily arranged," Kronos said. "But the details adapted were necessary," Fate added. "Because we had to have the office filled by a person of the appropriate nature," Nature said. "So that he could lead the battle against Satan," Mars concluded. "Damn you! Damn you all!" Zane cried. "I never asked for this onus. What right did any of you have to meddle in my life?" "The right of necessity," Nature said. "All mankind will be damned if we don't meddle." "Exactly how can my pain and Luna's death do anyone any good?" he demanded. "Her life," Fate corrected. "It is her life we need, not her death." "I showed you that," Kronos said. "In 20 years, Luna will balk Satan's political takeover of the United States of America, thus preventing him from instituting policies that will render the nation and the world decidedly unamicable, and send much of the living species of man directly to hell. But Luna cannot balk him if she dies prematurely." Zane's understanding was coalescing, but he was not pleased. "So you arranged to install a man in the office of Death, who you knew would not take her," he said bitterly, "because he was fool enough to love what was thrust at him for that purpose, and magician Kaftan did that to his own daughter. It is a terrible thing we do," Kronos said. "But the privations any of us face today are but an eye blink to those we shall face in a generation if the Prince of Evil wins. We sacrifice the now for the sake of the hence. I am in a position to know." "But you used me and her," Zane cried in continuing anguish. "Where is your morality?" "It is our business to use people," Fate said. "Have you yourself hesitated to employ your power to change the circumstances of your clients?" Of course she was scoring there, for Zane was in deep trouble for doing just that. He had hardly hesitated to impose his own view of what was right, sparing some clients, taking some, and changing the manner of the dying of others. Holy, holy, holy. "Now, in the hour of crisis, we are using ourselves," Fate continued. "We have made it possible for you to save the living world by saving the life of the woman you love. You were ready to oppose us, though you knew our power when we tested you on this just now. Now you can aid us to your own advantage." It was, of course, true. They had spun him into an inextricable commitment. Without Fate's intervention in his life, he would probably have shot himself and... No, of course, she had also set up his need to shoot himself by denying him his romance with Angelica. Or had she set that up too? How far back did this go? Probably, left to his own devices, he would have looked at the stones in the mess of pottage shop, been able to afford none, and returned to his dreary former existence. He would at this moment be scrounging for back rent by selling pornographic photographs of unsuspecting women. Instead, he had been launched into a fantastic new realm of death and love. Nature smiled. "Mars grasped the essentials of the battle between God and Satan," she said. "Kronos spotted the key episode to come. I defined the qualities of the person who could and would do what had to be done, and Fate arranged to put him, you, in the proper situation. We collaborated and touched your life as you looked at the Death Stone, and now the matter is in your hands. We cannot fight this battle without your acquiescence." "But you didn't tell me." "Had we set it up openly, Satan would have known," Fate reminded him. "He would have acted to prevent this encounter, just as he acted to eliminate Luna before her turn. The Prince of Evil has no civilized limits. He seeks only his own aggrandizement, and his craft and power are enormous. But now the deed is done, and even he cannot rescind it. Though he is surely listening to us now. The time for secrecy is past." "What deed?" Zane demanded, exasperated. "I have not saved Luna's life. I have only refused to take her soul." "And will you take that soul hereafter if Satan asks you to?" Nature asked, cannily. "No. And not if you ask me to, Green Mother. I love Luna. I don't care by what machinations the rest of you arranged this thing, or whom I might have loved otherwise, or whom she might have loved. I'll not betray her myself." "We thought you would feel that way," Nature said. "We never wished you evil, Thanatos. We always wished you success. We deeply regret having to plot against your predecessor, who was a decent office-holder, but he would not have balked at taking Luna. He was too experienced with the mischief of opposing the status quo, and would not try to thwart God or Satan. We had to have a headstrong, emotional death, new enough and young enough not to be jaded by experience, and alive enough to respond to an attractive and intelligent young woman. We chose you, and we used you, and for that we apologize. But we believe we had no choice. We could not do the job ourselves. The brunt must be yours. Satan wants Luna dead, but only you can complete that death. As long as you hold out, Satan is foiled." Zane looked at Luna's body, the welling and dripping blood frozen in place. "Much good may it do her or the world," he muttered. "She's not dead, but neither is she alive." Kronos raised his hourglass. "Now I can act." He turned his hand, reversing the glass without inverting it, so that the sand flowed upward. Outside their circle, time ran backward, as it had on the night of the fire. The dragoness's mouth opened. Blood welled into Luna's body, rising in swift drops from the ground and coursing in rivulets to closing wounds as the monster's teeth withdrew. The dragoness's head jerked back, and Luna sprang out, blind and flayed. She reeled backward into a coalescing cloud of smoke. She screamed. In a moment the smoke squeezed into the reptile's mouth, and Luna backed away unharmed. Kronos gestured with the hourglass, and time refroze. "Now you can take her back on temporary license, but there are some cautions. Satan cannot make you take her soul, but he can make you wish you had. You will have to be brutally steadfast." Zane looked at the restored Luna, suddenly so healthy. He blinked. The horror had unhappened. "I shall be." "But you cannot decline this client without declining all," Nature said. "On others you could choose before, for you were merely juggling their situations when no other supernatural entity was concerned. But in this case, the issue has been joined. Satan will hold you to the technicality of the law, for all that he honors no technicalities himself. You will not be permitted to take any soul without first taking Luna's. You must take none or all." "Then I'm on strike," Zane said. "I will take none until Luna is released from this wrongful schedule of demise." "Yet Satan will press his case," Mars warned. "Never in your life or death have you waged such a campaign against an Eternal. We do not know whether you will be able to prevail." "I won't take Luna's soul," Zane insisted, "no matter what. You conspired to put me into love with her, and I know that and resent it, but I never betrayed one I loved, though my own soul be in peril." "Yes, we know," Nature said. "That was your prime qualification for our purpose. You are intemperately loyal to your loves and your beliefs." She kissed him on the cheek. "The fate of humanity depends, however deviously, on your resolve," Fate said, kissing his other cheek. "Never forget that." Mars and Kronos nodded grave agreement. Then there was a swirl of mixed impressions, and the others were gone. Zane was left with Luna and the hot smoke dragoness. Zane touched his watch, and the motion resumed. Luna moved toward the dragoness, but she stopped, for there was already an offering before the monster. Evidently Nature had procured a sacrificial lamb for the occasion. The poor lamb gave one terrified bleat before getting chomped. For an instant Zane wondered how it could die if no souls could be collected, then remembered that the collectors of animal souls were not on strike. Only human souls were at issue. In moments the dragoness consumed the virgin lamb, wool and all. She licked off her chops, burped, and limped over to rescue her precious egg. She picked it up carefully in her mouth, breathed just enough fire to melt a spot on the shell, and stuck it to her back. Then she unfurled her wings, scrambled along the sand runway, headed into the wind, got up velocity, and took off. Soon she was a diminishing speck in the sky. Zane strode across the sand, and intercepted the leader of the dragoons, who was staring as if at a miracle. "Are you satisfied? Then release the virgin." The man nodded. "Did you see that?" he asked raptly. "Suddenly a lamb. It must be an act of God." "The virgin's onus is abated," Zane said insistently. "Oh, yes," the man said absently. "We shall transport her to our base city to the south of Nevada, Las Vegas. and purchase a carpet ticket to her home. You have my word." And the word of this dedicated man was good. Zane turned to the Virgin. "When you get home, miss, I suggest you—" "Oh, yes, sir," she exclaimed. "I will marry the boy next door immediately." Good enough. She would no longer be at risk as dragon bait. Her job was done. His own, however, was just beginning. Zane walked up to Luna and took her by the arm, leading her toward his horse. Mortis had simply faded out of the picture and faded back in now that he was needed again. Luna seemed dazed. "I was scorched, crushed," she said, putting her free hand where her wounds had been. So she remembered. "Time, that's Kronos, another incarnation, reversed your sacrifice. You have been spared because I refused to take your soul." "But you should not have been summoned for me," she protested. "My sin outweighs my good. I should have gone directly to hell." "So we thought," he agreed. "But you chose a good way to meet your transformation, seeking and expecting no reward. Your soul is now in balance, as the other incarnations knew it would be, and you are my direct client. Your life would still have been forfeit because of Satan's cheating, but I have gone on strike. No one will die until your case is settled." "But then, what is my status?" she asked, perplexed. She seemed bemused to find herself alive and without physical pain, as well she might be. "Limbo, I believe." He considered and realized that the other incarnations had not told him much. They had simply set the scene, and now he had to play it out. "I think you can go about your normal life, on bail, as it were, until this business with Satan is settled." "My normal life?" she exclaimed incredulously. "At least I can take you home, where you'll be safe with your griffins and moon moth." She formed a wry smile. "I hope you know what you're doing, Zane, because I'm not at all sure at the moment where reality lies. I expected to be dead." "I'm righting a wrong," he said. "Satan conspired against you, and I mean to foil him. It would be the proper thing to do, even if I had not been led into this situation like a puppet on a string, and even if I didn't love you." "I hardly think I'm worth it, dead or alive," she murmured as they reached Mortis. "Worth saving or worth loving?" "Either. I'm just not that important a person. I know I couldn't stand up to Satan, or even to one of his demons." She shuddered, remembering the demon she had encountered. "And I doubt that love—" Mortis leaped into the sky. "Your doubt doesn't matter," Zane said. "Your soul will remain on Earth." She hugged him uncertainly from behind, not speaking again. He delivered her to her home and left her there with the admonition to stay indoors and sleep. He would check on her frequently. "Home, Mortis," he said, suddenly very tired. The death steed plunged into the sky.